Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Armchair Sports YouTube channel. I'm here with Kingofprussia,
Hello, hello.
and we are going to roast some NFC teams' outlooks today. Are you ready?
Oh, I was born ready.
All right. So we're doing the NFC in the first half. Acorn will be needing to do some analysis of the AFC, and we're doing an off-season preview, as you saw in the title. So we're going to go through, talk about kind of some questions and priorities we've thought of, maybe, or at least wrote down, maybe not thought of, for these teams, and then also talk about who they have free agents and how much cap space they have, as well as some draft pick stuff. So
Yeah, it'll be a good time.
yeah, it'd be a great time. All right, so we're starting in Chicago, the Bears. Their big question is, for me at least, it's Davis Mills.
Davis Mills. I'm not sure about Davis Mills. Like, he looked good as a rookie, but he's on the Houston Texans. So
Yeah,
I'd have confidence in him if he was on an organization that you can kind of rely on. But with how the Texans are right now, I don't know. Like,
yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Like
I
Davis
think you
Mills.
definitely stick with him for another year because this quarterback draft is gonna be bad. But like, don't go all in on him. Like, make sure if you have picks for a backup plan if you need to implement a backup plan.
So yeah, I think if you stay with him, it'd be very hard to keep the team as it is, and that's kind of why it's like Davis Mills. Like if you're sticking with Davis Mills, the likelihood he works out as a former, they spent a second on him, but a third round pick is
Yeah,
not super high long term anyway. So I think you probably hedge your bets and start like acquiring some, next year draft capital and stuff from some of your guys, in hopes that you can get the Bryce Young or Stroud or something.
yeah.
If it doesn't work, obviously.
If it does, then that's great. You have a franchise quarterback that you get to pay pennies for a couple of years.
Exactly. And then I have for their top priority, is again, this kind of changes if they decide to rebuild because it doesn't matter, but upgrade tackle play. Their tackles
Definitely.
on paper are good, but they allowed like 700 sacks. So they need to find a way to upgrade if they're going to try to be good next year.
Yeah, whenever you have a young quarterback, you always need that offensive line to help them stand up in the pocket and be able to make their throws, keep the pressure off of them. So definitely tackle play, an important thing to be upgrading.
And then their free agents, I have Big Ben listed. I swear to God, if he fucking comes back, I'm
He's
going to
retiring.
remove it.
He's
Yes,
retiring.
but he should retire, so he won't be an issue for them. They won't have any dead cap or anything. But if he does, for some reason, fucking play next year and they want to bring him back, Big Ben's a free agent. And then Bilal Nichols is basically the only guy of note that isn't under contract on their roster.
Yeah.
And then for their draft picks, they have pick 14. A good spot for a quarterback in this class. There's a decent chance they end up with a quarterback one. Maybe a small move up to do it if it happened. So if they did love a guy, they could try. And they have their own third round pick as well.
If I were them, I might trade down. Maybe require a second round pick if you can, and see what
Yep.
players can fall to you because there's a lot of talent that could go untapped in this draft. So definitely just lay back, wait for someone else to pick like an overdraft, and then jump.
Yeah, I think this class is a lot of guys that are on like a same level. Not quite as good as the last class up top, but like I think there's like 40 guys like in that kind of middle range between 30 to, you know, 60s where they'll go, and you could love them if they fit your scheme, that kind of stuff.
Definitely.
They do have 45 million to spend if they decided they wanted to try to build a, more competent roster around Davis Mills to give him a shot.
I could
If
see them
that's
going out maybe. Teron Armstead's a free agent, so is Trent Brown. I could see them going out trying to get a top tackle. They could afford it for sure. So
And Ramchek's also a free agent, hasn't gotten a contract yet. So
yeah,
someone like that, they could just shore it up and kind of go into rebuild, knowing you have at least one. But yeah, that is what I got for the Bears. Any last thoughts on them?
yeah. I mean, they just got to set up for in a couple of years when the Packers can't maintain that team anymore, and they should be good to go.
Yeah, them and the Lions are sitting really good in that respect.
Definitely.
Um, have some young talent. The Bears maybe less so than the Lions, just because the Lions have so many draft picks and drafted well last year, but they can be right there. They're setting themselves up for it. And now we head to probably the most questionable offseason, in my opinion, at least, the Bucks,
Hmm.
because is Brady going to retire? If he does retire, okay, that's relatively easy. We just trade everybody, or We don't have to, but it
You can
does
try and
seem
get a quarterback if they wanted to go get like a quarterback. They could swing for Carson Wentz, I guess. Maybe Gardner Minshew.
it would have to be Gardner Minshew because they can't afford anything. They are negative 50 in cap
Yeah.
space. They have no draft picks except for a couple fifth rounders. Like it's it's not looking great for them. I think Campbell is a free agent. Calais Campbell. Their team's really weird
Yeah.
because their sheet's been a little messed up and they have a bunch of void years guys. So it's like I guess on void years. And then Gronk too, but Gronk probably retires if Brady does. So that's
Yeah.
kind of a and then so for their top priority, I just put TBD. Like their question is
Like
Brady.
yeah,
Their
like
priority,
maybe their top priorities are quarterback, or maybe he just needs to like find a way to fit everybody under the cap for one more year.
yeah.
It depends.
And you could try to trade some of the guys that are like extra. Like you could try to trade Fuller to get a little more cap flexibility if you could, or you could try to trade, whatever bigger contract guys you have that you could.
You could
And
trade away
try
Vita
to,
Vea if you wanted to get some good picks, but he's also a really good player, so it really
that's kind
depends.
of tough. But yeah, that's the Bucks are just they're not a team you can elaborate a lot on because they don't have a lot of moving parts yet, but they may have to have a ton.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of cap shenanigans this offseason for Trevor, I think.
Definitely a lot of cap shenanigans. But then for our next team, this is the first in our series of one big question from me, the Cardinals. And the question is, why did this stack in the roster not work? I have like 4 of these because there were a lot of teams that were built very well that did not work at all in the sim. At least the Cardinals made the playoffs, but they did end up losing in the first round, which is certainly not their expectations.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the roster again, and it just doesn't like. I think the issue might have honestly just been the offensive line.
And that is what I put for their top priority. Their issue was the offensive line. But the thing is, when you watch them play on offense, I don't really think it came up. Like, Kyler just ran around all the pass rush. Like, he took some sacks that he shouldn't have, but, like, he's elusive enough that he didn't really need to get much blocking, and he made better plays when he was outside of the structure of it. So it was just so weird.
I'm not sure. Maybe some playbook change could be good for them too down the road. Get a more balanced one, maybe. Some more running in there.
They did not utilize like Kyler enough in the running game like consistently. When they did, they were almost impossible to stop. But they just didn't, and they didn't use Saquon nearly enough. Even though he did lead, like he was top 5 in the league in rushing, but it felt like he did it in like 250-yard games.
Yeah.
Against bad teams, like he just destroy them, and then in the big games they needed him, he'd be fine, but they wouldn't use him a lot.
Yeah. Additionally, they have some question marks as far as extension goes. They really got to get an extension to Kyler Murray this offseason because he's like the next, they have the 5th-year option coming up. But after that, he'd be a free agent. So they definitely are going to want to get him under wraps.
Definitely, that is like a big question. Is on like long term, they just need to get that done. He is a stud, but they're pending free agents: Cedric Wilson, Christian Kirk, I guess Desmond Trufant, Justin Houston, and the best quarterback on their roster, Mason Rudolph.
They can probably fit all that under. Their cap situation is not awful next year.
Yeah, they have negative $30 million, but it is relatively movable. I think the biggest like hurdle for them is going to be they really are probably going to need to extend Kyler.
Yeah.
He's going to want that extension now. They're going to want to extend him before some huge deals start moving the market. If they're smart about it, because Josh Allen's coming up and he's probably getting the Mahomes contract.
Oh yeah, he's getting the bag.
So then that's 2 guys up there. If there's 2 guys up there, it's not quite as easy to throw them out in a negotiation. Right now, you can say, yeah, we're throwing out Mahomes, but now if it's 2 quarterbacks, like, so they're gonna have to, answer for that, for sure.
Definitely.
So it'll be interesting to see what they do. They have their 2nd round pick and the Atlanta 3rd round pick. They traded their first for Julio, who they'll still have next year. And now we move to the Dallas Cowboys. And for me, my question for them is just, how do you take the next step? I felt like they played really well this year, but what's next for them to get better?
Honestly, I'm not sure. This is a pretty well constructed roster overall. They did
Yeah,
miss out on Micah Parsons, which the real life Cowboys drafted, so it's definitely not ideal on that front. But they'll have some wiggle room if they want to add on some extra talent, for sure. And it's just about finding like I think one more piece for them, you know.
yeah. I think their secondary is still a question mark. Um, kind of similar to in real life, like a little bit. Like their secondary could use some more
Yeah, like a
filling out.
safety maybe.
Yeah. So I think that's like the one piece they could add is like a safety or a good corner or something to go aside Diggs, who's certainly going to be good enough in Madden to get by. Like
Yeah.
he'll be fine for next year. But for their priority, I had wide receiver and defensive back depth. Like they really only had the 2 wide receivers this year, so they probably need to add a third. And then in the secondary, it's like you kind of had starters, but it's like you didn't really have a third corner you
You had
could rely on.
starters, but you didn't really have like
Yeah,
stars at all.
you would like your starting free safety and your starting second corner from last year to be your third safety and your third corner ideally. So if
Yeah.
you can get to that, they have 8 million in cap space, so they have some room and they can obviously make more room. But that's like the avenue I think they have to get better. I don't know if that's going to be enough to get them over the hump though. That's the issue.
They'll have to be creative, I think, and we'll see how they do.
Yeah, they have their own second and third round picks this year. But then moving on to a much more fun team to talk about their offseason, Philadelphia Eagles.
Oh, the Eagles have so many picks.
Yes, so my big question, Jordan Love, Jalen Hurts, or a rookie?
Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, it's probably going to be Hurts because his overall is going to be better. But it's like, is this the time you want to try to take a swing at a random quarterback with pick 24? You know what I mean? Like, they have 4
They
fucking...
could.
It's the same thing as the real-life Eagles, really. It's kind of times 3 because it's Jordan Love also. Like, you kind of think Jordan Love could be something eventually. And you kind of think, Jalen Hurts, he's always improved every year of his career. So you think maybe Jalen Hurts is going to take another step forward. So,
I think the important thing for the Eagles, they have 4 first-round picks. If they should stick with their 2 quarterbacks, I think. They have Jordan Love and Jalen Hurts, like you said. Either of them could turn out to be a franchise quarterback. And I think you have enough swings at quarterback with those 2. But what you can do with 4 first-round picks is you can just stack the roster with young talent. Even if you only have a 50% hit rate on your first-round picks, which is the average, that's still two high-impact players that you just love to have. So, and Philly really, they don't have to pick by position. They can pick by the raw talent of the player, the best player to pick. And I think that if they have 4 first-round picks, they have a solid foundation. If they can get a good draft, they'll be set for next year, I think.
yeah, I think like their picks, if I were picking them, I think you should take another swing at quarterback. Not with your first couple, but like I think you should take a swing at a quarterback just because this class kind of has a lot of guys who could be it, have a lot of tools. I think you just take another stab at it. If it doesn't work, you wasted a pick, but you wasted a pick in a year you already had 4. So I think it's like you're getting a blue chip guy at 5. You take it. It could be Hamilton. It could be Stingley. It could be, if you like Gardner as a blue chip guy, like you can get like an elite player for your system at 5. At 8, I think it's a good spot for an Ekwonu or a Cross or something like that. Like I think you can get a really good tackle because they don't have quite the depth of tackle that the real life Eagles do.
Yeah.
They didn't have a right tackle to speak of. And they have Mailata there at left, who can play either side as well. So, like, if you wanted to draft Cross, who's played at the left, he played at the left mostly. So, if you didn't want to flip him, you can trust Mailata to flip for you.
Yeah.
But I think they should go like tackle there because it is a really good tackle class. So take one.
Just get some offensive line, get some defensive line, secondary, anything.
Yeah, 12 is where I have your quarterback 1 there. I just take it. If it's the guy who you think is the best in the class, who's going to translate the best, if it's a Ritter or a Pickett or any of the other guys, unless it's Strong because he has no knees, I'd take him at 24. But if it's any of those guys, Willis, if it's any of them, just take him at 12 if he's there. If somebody reaches 4-1 at 8 or something, then or not 8, I guess that's their pick. If someone reaches for them at like 7 or something, then don't take it. If he's not number 1 on your board, then move on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I still don't think they should take a quarterback in the class, but it's just a disagreement between us, I think. We'll see how Philly handles it.
I think if they traded down and got another pick in 23 and didn't take one this year, knowing it's a much better quarterback class, I could like be cool with it. Like then you're sitting with a ton of ammunition and you hope the right team ends up with a top pick so you can trade with them. That's fine. Obviously, I'd be cool with that. They have a lot of ways they can go. Their top priority that I had is just patience. Don't try to sell everything off to get better this year.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of it, because you're not quite that close. You had a good year this year, but you don't necessarily have enough to get to that like Super Bowl level, and that's what you're trying to build. You're trying to build that championship roster that can be cheap enough to be sustainable. So keep your picks, basically.
Build for 1 more year, be a little bit mediocre, and then next year you can unleash everything.
Yep. Their free agents are Singleton, Avonte Maddox, Boston Scott, and Levi Wallace. So not really too bad of a free agency class out. Singleton played well for them, but isn't necessarily that special. Levi Wallace is probably going to be the most expensive of the group, but he's not. He's the kind of decent number 2 corner, but he'd be a good guy if they could. They have $40 million in cap space. $130 million of that is dead cap. I just wanted to mention that they're really good at that. That's
they are.
But now we head to a very difficult offseason, the Falcons. The question is, like, are you supporting Matt Ryan or are you trading Matt Ryan? To me, I think they're going to lean support Matt Ryan.
Yeah, so do I.
Like, I think you're not going to get enough for him, really. Because he's, like, I think it's just better to let him play out his career. And you can build a roster with him still there, I think.
Yeah, you can build a competitive roster, try to get back to the Super Bowl. Tampa Bay's not going to last forever. Maybe just 1 more year for Tampa Bay. So if you want to build for 2023 to be a division champion, I think that's the move.
Yeah, and if Tom retires, it's like, who else is going to be there? I think the Saints are like around there, but I don't think they're really scared of the Saints in a sense. I think that they could be close and battle for it. I think both can make the playoffs next year if Tampa's out. But like they both were close this year. But it's just like I don't think you're expecting anything but the division next year, so you kind of got to stick with it.
Yeah, just stay the course. Just build. They have 2 first-round picks. They can build, get some receiver talent in the room after the departure of Julio Jones and potentially Calvin Ridley. Just get the team built, pretty much.
Yeah, so I had their top priority being wide receiver depth because, you kind of lost Ridley and you lost Julio for a part of the year at least, and Julio's gone for good. Yeah. So need kind of a third guy, a fourth guy. They had Russell Gage really play well for them. Led the league in receiving yards or receptions, was like second in yards and first in touchdowns. And he's a free agent. That's not ideal. Cordell Patterson's a free agent. Boysad, Aluakun, Isaiah Oliver, Max Williams, and Younghoe Koo. So that is a awful free agent list for them because they have $0 in cap space coming in.
Yeah.
And it's not going to look easy to get anything off because they have a lot of bloated salaries because they had to move people back last year to get under. And now you have the same situation except for they're even worse contracts that you're going to have to make way worse. Like Matt Ryan's going to be like $50 million next year if you have to restructure. Like Grady Jarrett's going to get over $24 million if you have to restructure. Like it's going to get rough to get enough room to keep your guys and add anything.
They might have to make some difficult cuts. We'll see what Jet decides to do.
Yeah, it's going to definitely be a difficult offseason, however you slice it.
Definitely.
So now we head to Washington, the team with no name still. Hopefully that changes soon. My big question for them is how to get early season Trey Lance more often because he was a Rookie of the Year favorite for the first 6 or so weeks of the season and really fell off. Had some really bad weeks in there. So they showed what the team could be with him. They didn't win a lot of games even when he was playing well, but they won more than they ended up. Yeah. But it's just how do you build this thing up around him without having your first round pick that was really good because you traded it for Lance?
I think just try to hit on some later round picks, some long term ones, get the offensive line better, using whatever cap space. I mean, they have cap space, of course. Honestly, I could see him going out and getting like a top tackle. It's from Armstead, Trent Brown, Ramchick, one of those 3. And potentially look for some secondary talent. There are going to be some strong safeties on the market this free agent cycle.
Yep.
So
I think they have $50 million to spend. Plus, they don't necessarily have a very rigid roster like Atlanta, so they can make plenty of room to make some moves. They have some weird contracts in there, but they can make it work. Like,
Definitely.
it's weird. They built their team, and they had so much money last year, and they just kind of spent it weirdly. And it's going to kind of come back to bite them, I think, next year. This year it's fine, but I think next year, if they actually make moves, it's going to be restrictive in 23. But they have a rookie quarterback, so that's helpful. Rookie quarterback contract.
Yeah.
Their pending free agents are Logan Thomas and Trey Turner, which Logan Thomas would be the important one to keep because they don't have another tight end really.
Yeah.
But their top priority, their tackles are a nightmare, and
Definitely.
that's what like. They definitely need a tackle. Like I think that was a lot of why their offense was so bad. They couldn't run the ball. They Lance under duress. Like they need to be able to run the ball better and move the ball better without getting under pressure. So the tackle, there are a lot of teams that are in the tackle market. They're one of the best ones to be equipped to do so. They have a pretty decent path to the playoffs this next year, so a tackle could look at them as a good opportunity too.
Definitely.
And now we head San Francisco, the 49ers. All in all, I'd say it's a pretty successful season for them. It wasn't quite as good as maybe it could have been at its high end, but it was not really its low end either. I think you got about as much as you'd expect out of a rookie quarterback and all of that. Yeah. My question for them was, why wasn't the defense better? Like, I think they have all the dudes to do it. The defense just didn't rank very well. They were in the bottom 10.
I don't know.
It was just really...
Yeah. Sometimes there are inexplainable things that Madden does. Maybe a problem for them, they don't really have, like, a bona fide safety. So, I mean, like, they had Lattimore. They have a good defensive line.
Yeah, it's Jimmy Ward and Malcolm Jenkins are their two right now.
Yeah, it's kind of
Yeah, I agree, kind of I had as their cornerback 2 as a priority, as well as defensive tackle.
Yeah.
And those two things, I think, because they didn't stop the run and they didn't stop the pass. And it's like, they have two of the best linebackers in the league, in Davis and Fred Warner. So you think if you can just get a little better on the defensive line, they'll fix the running game for you. It's just about getting better in the secondary, I think, primarily.
Yeah, just gotta stop the run or the pass.
Yeah.
So build for one of those.
For their pending free agents, Ahkello Witherspoon, who was really good in Pittsburgh in real life this year. So we'll see what kind of money he could fetch. Emmanuel Sanders, probably gone. Geno Atkins, Jason Barrett, Raheem Mostert, Ted Karras, and Tevin Coleman. So,
Not too many priorities there, honestly.
Yeah. It's a list of guys that are like, he's nice. Yeah, he's fine. Ahkello Witherspoon, he's fine, but I don't want him to be number 2 like he was this year.
Yeah.
So, Jason Verrett, he always gets injured, so you can get him for cheap back, and he's a good player, so he'll always be rated well because he's a good player. He just always misses 6 games. Even in the sim, he missed 7 games.
Yeah.
Like, the sim, which isn't very good at giving injuries to a lot of people for long term, gave him 7 weeks. So,
Even the sim knows injuries.
Yeah, they do have $9 million in cap space, so I think they can make that work. If they want to make a big move, the Jimmy G dead cap not being there. They were going to move on from him like in real life, so that helps.
Yeah.
For sure. And now we head to the Giants. My question is to trade back or not to trade back? That is the question. Because they have the number 1 pick.
Well, who would want to trade up for that? Do you have any candidates in mind? Like, I don't think...
A lot of these, I have a similar thing coming up later with the Lions. It's just like, maybe you trade back. Like maybe it just happens that way. But I don't know what you get. So it's a really tough draft to be number 1 and have way more needs than just the number 1 pick.
Yeah. Like if they just needed a quarterback, then it would be acceptable. But they have a lot of needs. They need a lot of extra players to really get back up there.
So here's the thing I was thinking about for like the Giants, like specifically. If there was a team like I guess they probably wouldn't trade with the Jets, but like a team that has like a top 7, 8 or so pick, and they wanted to get to number 1, would you take relatively even value for it? Not necessarily getting the usual number 1 pick premium, like this was number 2, but like when the Eagles traded up for Wentz or whatever. Like they treated that like a number 1 pick because they felt like Wentz was a number 1 pick player if it wasn't for other players in the class. So I think, would you be able to get that?
I think you would take that if you got it, but it really...
Is Aiden Hutchinson or Kayvon Thibodeau worth that much? and I think that's a hard sell to me because the edge rusher is a valuable position, but I don't think they are quite the Nick Bosa levels of slam dunk pick.
Yeah.
Like, I think they'd be a relatively weak number 1 overall pick. I think there are a lot of strong blue chip players, but like I don't think that they're like. I think they're all worth about the number 5 pick to me. Like not quite number 3 pick. You know what I mean?
If I could trade back as New York, I think I would, but I'm not sure that anyone wants to trade up.
Yeah. So I think that they should just take the pick and keep going. And there's worse things in the world than getting a great pass rusher. It's just I feel like they might want to be in the quarterback sweepstakes next year, and they might not trust the sim to make them bad again. But they have so many holes that like their top priority is a lot of things, but not wide receiver number 1.
Definitely not.
They'll be fine, but a lot of other things, just not that. The pending free agents, I have CJ Uzama, and then I said the rest can go. I didn't even want to list them out. The rest can go.
If Nate Solder, I mean, he's like replacement level, I guess.
Yeah, I guess, but like he could also go. They have Pert, he'll be fine. They'll probably end up drafting one too. It's a great line class, like down to like the second round. They'll end up with one of those guys too. Yeah. I'd imagine. They have $95 million to spend if they choose to spend it. But yeah, they'll spend some of it, but obviously not much probably. And now we head to Detroit, the team I mentioned just then. They ended up being back to back. Does the draft make them better to trade down? Is my question, because I don't necessarily know the answer. I felt pretty confident to say the Giants would be better off trading down. I don't feel so strongly about the Lions because they have 2 top 4 picks.
I mean, if you can get decent value to trade down for one of them, like you definitely keep either 3 or 4. If you can trade down on one of them and get good value, then I would. But it's the same issue I think for the Giants. Is I don't know who wants to climb that ladder.
It would have to. The only thing I think of is it would have to be for Stingley, because Stingley you can't really talk yourself into at 1, but at 3 you can. It's a little bit less to trade for, and like if you just like buy into him as just like a shutdown corner, like he's gonna be Ramsey, you convince yourself that 2 first-round picks plus a little change is worth it. Yeah. But that's like, and it's hard to say that because he hasn't played since he was a freshman. He was really, really damn good as a freshman, but like. It's just hard to say that he can beat that, with all the injuries and stuff. So that's kind of the tough part with their thing. But I think they're like fine in drafting at 3 and 4. You get 2 blue chip guys. The only awkward part is their defense is actually going to be looking really, really good. And it's just like maybe they want to try to reach on an offensive guy instead. But it'd be interesting to see what happens there. Their free agents are Equanimeous St. Brown. You gotta keep him. Because you want to try to bring in Amon-Ra again from the Eagles. But Jonathan Allen is probably the big one, and then Tyrell Williams also. Fine. They probably need all the wide receiver depth they can get. So they probably try to keep Tyrell Williams. He was pretty good for them in the sim. Continuing. They have picks 3, 4, 20, and then they have a couple seconds in third. So they got some work to do. They have $48 million. I think they're a team that could talk themselves into trying to go for it a little bit if the Packers fall apart or something, but I think that they're probably going to sit in the middle like the Eagles, really.
Yeah, probably. And they can build more for the future as well.
Speaking of the devil, the Packers are up. The big question is Aaron Rodgers. I forgot to change their top priority, so I wrote this as a joke for the thing I screenshotted, but their top priority is what is cap space.
That is also an issue for them. They should be able to keep most of it together for next year. The year after, kind of like the Bucks, it's just going to fall apart, I think.
Yeah, negative $58 million is what they got, so they can make it work. But that was I left it as a joke, and then I forgot to change it. Their top priority, along with the teams who are still left, like the Bucks, is kind of like, how does the season go? Like, like if they win the title, it's like hard to say they have like a lot of needs anyway. So it's like, if they don't win, then it's a letdown. What happened? What do we need to do? But we don't know that yet. You're recording this on Wednesday, so. Yeah. They only have 2 third-round picks from their own, and Tennessee is their picks. Their free agents are B.J. Hill, D.J. Jones, David Njoku, Rashaan Evans, and Xavier Woods. So I think B.J. Hill would be tough to lose on the front. Njoku they traded for, I guess, so probably try to keep him. Rashaan Evans is the GOAT at forcing fumbles from linebacker.
You don't
But
say.
yeah. Anyway, Panthers are up next. Their big question and top priority is quarterback.
Just quarterback.
They need some help. They really do. Their pending free agents are pretty sad, honestly. It's Chukwuma Okorafor and Trey Boston are the only two that I could even tell myself to write. So that's a relatively sad list. Because it's not in the good way that they have all their guys locked up long term. Just they didn't have much to speak of. But they really need to improve tackle play, like a lot.
Yeah.
It's just quarterback's so much more important that it didn't really matter. But the tackles suck too. They have pick 11 in their own second and third. So they're in prime quarterback spot, though, I think.
Yeah, they can get a quarterback at 11.
You can waste a pick 11 on a quarterback. That was kind of like the point I was trying to get at. Like, Haskins was drafted at 11. And, they would have been fine if they would have just taken another swing. Rosen was at 10. And the Cardinals were fine without that top 10 pick. Because it just doesn't happen. It's better than taking it on a quarterback. So, I think 11 is the perfect spot for a quarterback to take one. Figure it out. I told them to take one last year, though. So, they didn't listen to me. Could have had Fields.
None of the real-life ones.
Yeah. Well, that was dumb for the real-life ones, too. They had
True.
Sam Darnold on the same level as Fields and Mac Jones. On their, being evaluated in the same. Which is absurd, but whatever. Anyway, on to the Rams. Their big question, can they keep Campbell? Because they haven't really had Campbell at that level because they didn't upgrade him until later in the season when he got really good.
Yeah.
And I think he played pretty hard for them when he got upgraded, and he played all right when he wasn't upgraded too. So it's could they swing it to keep him? And how much is he gonna cost? And is it worth it for them too? Because he's probably getting a bag. Because people like myself and many others in the league are, last year he was the best linebacker in the league. Let's go get him.
Yeah.
So it's going to be more reactionary, I think, as far as his free agency goes. I think he could reasonably expect a pretty decent linebacker contract. Not quite in the top end, but I would not be surprised if he ends up at fourth highest paid linebacker at the end of this, which is kind of crazy, but I wouldn't be shocked. 13.
Yeah, and the Rams just don't have the cap space to really make any moves here, unless they want to pull a New Orleans Saints and push it out to the future.
And I think they're in a good spot to do that. They traded for Stafford. I think that they could make it work. The issue is he's going to be a very difficult guy to re-sign before free agency because that bidding war is coming. He's not going to just take whatever. They're going to have to, give him a great contract to start.
Or tag him.
Yeah, or tag him. True, you could tag him. The problem with that is it does give you no flexibility in the current term with that. So, and they can tag him and try to extend him and everything like that, but they'll have to think of something. Their free agents are Alex Kappa, Austin Corbett, and Sebastian Joseph Day, along with Devondre Campbell. So really not that bad. They need to keep one of those linemen. They're one of them. I think Kappa was the starter, Corbett was the backup, but Corbett played some because of some various injuries and stuff. So you got to keep one of them at least. But if they're both cheap, just keep both.
Yep.
They have negative $22 million in cap space, aka one Trey Flowers. So they'll be fine, cap space wise.
Yeah, they'll be able to push that out.
Definitely. Now we are on to the Saints. The Saints are such a difficult team because of how fucked their situation is. But the big question is, where is this thing actually headed? Are you going to be positioned to be the team of the NFC South after the Bucs fall apart? I don't know. It's really, they played all right this year. They really came into their own at the end of the year. Jimmy G played a really good quarterback near the end of the year for them. Jamar Chase went from almost no yards to having 1,000 in 4 weeks. So that was helpful for sure and
Definitely.
reassuring. They might get Michael Thomas back. And that offense looked really good at that point because they had no receivers to start the year. Nobody was getting open. It was disaster.
It was not good.
The Chase started playing as good as he should have been when he got that X factor from the Detroit being revealed, and then he started really picking it up. So it's if you can get that for a whole year with Michael Thomas, you're looking at a really good situation. So that's, and then top priority is just more confidently fill out the roster. There's only so much you can do at the end of the season. At the end of the off season, you got to be on that thing to start.
Yep.
But I think there's room for it. I think a lot of teams are going to be a little more fiscally responsible this year, and that could lead them to be in a situation where they can pick up some decent value. I forgot to write in their cap space, even though I wrote it out. I do think they have 25 million or so, which is kind of a stark contrast to how the real life Saints are. They kind of got out of their cap hell.
Yeah.
Didn't do it in the way I would have wanted them to. Nobody would have wanted it that way, but they do actually have space. And they have a couple extra draft picks because of other trades they made, so they can fix this thing, kind of turn it around.
Yeah, they have a base there. If they just get some upgrades on both sides of the ball, they have the cap space. They have a first-round pick and a second. If they make the right moves, then the Saints could become a wildcard team for next year. And if Brady retires, I can see a division championship. But if Brady is still there, then the South is just the Buccaneers.
Man, I think like all the playoff hopefuls, I guess it was just the Falcons and Saints. Like, I think you can expect the NFC West to not be quite so even next year.
One of those teams will lose to the other ones.
One of those teams will lose. We said that this year, but the Rams or Cardinals are likely going to be as good this year, and they're likely going to win 13 games. One of them.
Yeah.
And that's going to bump one of the other ones down to 7 wins or so, and that's an opening for one of the NFC South teams, because it's not like the North or the East is very likely to take that spot from them.
Yeah.
Barring a Kirk Cousins resurgence, of course.
Kirk Cousins is Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins is really good for a man named Kirk Cousins. You know that?
Yeah.
Anyway, so that is what I had for the Saints and just their whole thing they got going. They do have Teron Armstead and Marcus Davenport to pay, so that's something they'll have to deal with. But we have the Seattle, speaking of NFC West teams, the Seahawks. Their big question is Dwayne Brown. He's older, but they're going to need to keep him to keep Russ happy, so it's kind of just how much is that going to cost on that sort of thing. And then I just had O-line stability and pass rush for the Heat. They had decent line, but they have some free agents on the line and stuff like that. It wasn't quite a good line, so it's does it need to get upgraded more? But they do have Quinn Miners, so he could potentially step in at guard instead of Pogue's center. So their center's up, but he could step in at guard, that other guard spot opposite of Jackson. So that's something to look out for. But the free agents, Benson Mayowa, who's pretty good this year in real life. Brandon Shell, probably gone. DJ Reeves is really good in real life. Sean Jackson, Dwayne Brown, Ethan Pokic, I can't know how to say his name. Jerron Reed, Michael Dixon, Punya Ford, Quandre Diggs, Rashad Penny, Trey Flowers, and Will Dissly.
That's a lot.
But some of these guys are less important than others, and I think none of them are going to be super expensive except for potentially Dwayne Brown.
Quandre Diggs might also get a pretty penny.
Yeah, Quandre Diggs is the other one who could get a lot. But I think everybody else is reasonably... DJ Reed was playing like he should have gotten a lot, but I'm not sure if it's going to be trusted enough. He may get a prove-it deal again, a sizable one, $8-9 million one or something. But maybe he wants a 1-year deal to do it again to get a $12-13 million a year deal. But he'll be interesting. They have $6 million cap space though, so while they have a long list of free agents, they also have the space to keep them if they want to and add some. So they got some room to work. And then our last team.
The final Infinity Stone.
Final Infinity Stone. Last, but also almost least, the Minnesota Vikings. My big question, and the biggest question maybe of anybody, is what the fuck, Kirk? What was that? You were the worst quarterback in the CFL all year, literally the lowest passing yards of anybody not named Ryan Fitzpatrick, who only played half the games. And even then, Fitzpatrick was within 200 yards of him. Both Kellen Mond and Deshaun Watson were over him per game. Deshaun Watson over him in general. It was terrible.
Kirk Cousins, he's mediocre.
Yeah, but he was terrible.
Worse than mediocre. Mediocre is an understatement.
He was so bad. They could have lived with mediocre Kirk. This year, mediocre Kirk gets them to borderline playoffs. But they got awful Kirk all year. It was so bad. So it's that's concerning. So their top priority is: do we rebuild, or do we reload? I don't think you're going to be able to trade Kirk Cousins after how bad he played in the sim.
Yeah, nobody wants Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's not going to happen. I don't think it would take a lot. They have to eat some of that money, probably. Well, they'd have to eat some of that money. They wouldn't get a lot for that, even. I don't know. They're gonna have to just keep him, I think. So that leads you towards the reload. But this team was really bad, and they didn't have a ton of injuries. They had some. They won games with some of the injuries. Actually, they lost Kendricks and Hunter for 3 games and won at least one of those games, which is a lot more than they won in any other 3-game stretch. So
yeah,
it's just really bad for them. To add to it, they have Brian O'Neill, Bryce Callahan, Charvarius Ward, Harrison Smith, and James Washington as free agents.
It's just not a good roster.
It's not. And all of the good pieces of it are free agents, basically, or old.
Yeah.
So it doesn't look great. Or Justin Jefferson. I shouldn't leave him out. But yeah. They have this, so they're another team that probably trades down, but they're not going to be able to, really. Because there's so many teams wanting to trade down. It's just, it's a buyer's market if you want to move up.
Yeah.
Because you can pick 1, 2, 4, probably, because they're not going to trade 3 if they don't have to. You can kind of pick how much value you want to give up to one of these blue chip guys if you even want to. So it's just tough. It's a really weird year. But they do have their second-round pick, which is going to be really high. I think the Baltimore conditions, I couldn't remember specifically, and I didn't want to look it up, but I think they get the better of theirs than Baltimore's pick.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're going to get their own. But they could move down to 40-something in the second round. But they have $40 million, so maybe they can make it work. But Brian O'Neill is another in this tackle class. It's a lot of tackle-needy teams, a lot of money to be thrown around at them. So
we'll have to see.
We'll have to see. Any closing thoughts from you?
I think in general the NFC will be similar next year as it was this year. Unless Brady retires, Buccaneers, Packers should be at the top, and you'll have a lot of other teams getting ready for when those 2 teams fall off.
Yeah, it feels like the NFC is just there's only one team I feel like that's actually really trying, other than them, and it's the Cowboys. The Cowboys are the other team that's we kind of want to be winning now. Other than that, it feels like a lot of teams kind of just holding off. I guess the Rams and Cardinals, but I feel like the Cardinals are a little more sustainable than them. The Rams are, I guess, in that situation, but they have Stafford, so I don't know if it's on that level,
Yeah.
I forgot about the Rams. The Rams and Cowboys are the ones that are really trying for now.
Mm-hmm.
Cardinals act like they're really trying for now, but they also can just kind of roll it through because of Kyler, so it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right, who wins the NFC next year?
Next year?
Just a hot reaction time. I just thought of this.
Give me the Cardinals next year. How about?
Cardinals next year. I'm going to go with the Packers because I think the Packers are running it back. But I don't, a lot of this is up for debate because we haven't seen them win a game in the conference championships yet. So
Yeah.
they haven't even made the Super Bowl since they won it. So, who knows? But yeah, I'll go with the safe pick and pick the Packers. Their futures are probably at even odds right now.
I'll say if Brady doesn't retire, I'd pick the Buccaneers, but I gotta hedge my bets. So
yeah,
cards.
I like one of the NFC West to be that team because the NFC West was just such a disaster this year. It's that's not gonna happen again. And there were really good teams that did fall apart. That's I think they can put it together. The NFC West only won 1 playoff game this year. That's literally the minimum.
Yep.
And they all made it. No upsets for them. So
unfortunate.
And the one who won the playoff game is the team that I'm least confident in going into the year and coming out of it. So, it's rough. It's so weird. But I guess that's kind of the meme about the NFC West, though. Is the only thing you can predict is that it's going to be fucking weird. But yeah, that's what I got. The NFC portion is done, while the AFC portion probably up right after this because we're going to record it. So, but yeah, thanks for joining me.
All right.